Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, I'm joined by one of the earliest supporters of The Articulate Fly and my friend Jason Randall. We discuss all the water that's passed under the bridge since our last conversation. Jason updates us on the fishing in the driftless, and we share some of our upcoming projects. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And a shout out to this episode's sponsor. This episode's sponsored by our friends at Norvise. Their motto is, tie better flies faster, and they produce the only vise that truly spins. We're in the home stretch of show season, but you have one last chance to hang out with the Norvise team at the Wasatch Fly Tying and Fly Fishing Expo on April 14th and 15th in Sandy, Utah. If you can't make it to Utah, head over to www.nor-vice.com today to check out all of Norvice's great products. Now, on to our interview. Well, Jason, welcome back to the Articulate Fly.
Marvin, thanks a lot. It's great to talk with you. It's great to be back on the Articulate Fly. I don't know how articulate I'll be. It's happy hour here in Wisconsin. I'm 2 mules in, but I'll do my best.
Well, I appreciate that, and I apologize for being a little late tonight. And it's kind of amazing. We were talking before we started recording. I was shocked when I went back. You were episode 6 back in late 2018, and we're now on, I think, episode 644. So it's been a while, and a little bit of water's been under the bridge. How did the 2023 show season treat you?
It did treat me well. It was a great show season. We had just a great deal of enthusiasm in our sport, lots of energy, and new anglers and families and ladies and kids. It's just, I think it's a great place right now to be.
Yeah, and it was great too. I was in Atlanta and Denver with you, and I guess the great thing was to kind of see things, I would say, come back. And I would think in Denver they kind of exceeded, pre-COVID.
Yep, I think you're right too. I think Denver's gotten to be one of the hottest shows on the circuit, and it's always fun to be there. Denver's got a real good vibe.
Yeah, and so it's funny, so much water's gone under the bridge that you have a few grandchildren now. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I've got 4 since we last spoke on Articulate Fly. I've got grandkids between 1 and 4 years of age, 2 boys and 2 girls, and my 2 older grandkids are learning how to fish. So that's really cool. As a grandpa now, teaching your kids how to fish. I've got a buddy that's got a bass pond, and we go out there, and you're not going to believe this, but we drown some hot dogs under some bobbers and catch a bunch of bass and bluegill. So I guess in that respect, we're seeing a de-evolution of the Randall family, generationally at least. Next I guess it'll be a can of corn, but we'll get them into fly fishing here. But right now, for young kids, it's just fun to see them catch fish and have fun. Yeah,
well, if it makes you feel better, I think I've got a half a dozen legit cane poles in the corner here in my office.
We all started that way. I can remember being that kid with a cane pole and a bobber and a can of worms,
Yeah, I would imagine Zebco 33s for Christmas or within the next couple of years.
Yeah, I remember it's going to be happening for sure. But get them on some fly fishing here too. They're good kids, and just seeing them enjoy the outdoors and grow up with an appreciation of that it's special. We were able to spend Sunday together, all the kids and grandkids, and had breakfast and go to church together. And you know what? That's a rich blessing.
Yeah. And it's got to be awesome too. Like the grandchildren thing is great, but I would imagine it's really special to see your children being parents too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of that what goes around comes around thing, and when you kind of wish, when you're going through the trials of parenthood, you say to your kid, I hope you have a kid just like you. And then they do. And it's like, oh my goodness. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And, you actually cut your 2023 show season off a little bit early because you went to Alaska for the Iditarod. You want to tell folks a little bit about your trip?
Oh, that was spectacular. Yeah, we did. We did half a show season this year. We were done in mid-February rather than going through, the end of March. And both my wife and I are veterinarians. And even though I trained as in fish health and medicine to be, hatcheries, biology, veterinarian, I spent most of my career in private practice. Being a hatchery veterinarian, it's kind of like slow starvation. But because of that, we got a chance to work with some of the top sled dog teams in the Midwest, and we volunteered to go up to the Iditarod. And the first time you go, this was our first year, we took the training program. We got a chance to meet the mushers and the sled dogs and do the vet health checks, pre-race health checks on their teams. And then, we got to see the start of the race, and hopefully next year we'll be actually out on the trail doing the checkpoints. Those dogs are incredibly well cared for and very beloved by their mushers. And at each check station, there's a team of veterinarians and support personnel to make sure those dogs get the care they need. And it's quite an experience. We loved it, and hopefully we'll be back next year too.
Super neat. And, since the last time we spoke, you've built another nymphing rod for TFO called the Stealth. You want to tell us a little bit about it and kind of how you built on the Drift?
Yeah, that's fun. The Drift and the Stealth, two completely different rods. The Drift rod is really a kind of a 4-in-1 rod. It's a great dry fly rod, a good nymphing rod. It's also a very, very good trout spay rod. It kind of covers a multitude of different areas, where the Stealth rod is specifically a Euro nymphing rod. And that was fun because it included a lot of other people, friends like Devin Olson and Ed Engel and Tom Starmack, a lot of folks you've had on the Articulate Fly, also kind of corroborated with the Stealth rod and really getting the, kind of the combination of different opinions and backgrounds. Really, I thought that rod really turned out really fun. It's a great rod.
Yeah, neat. And I know it was kind of an interesting new experience when you built the Drift, kind of going through the design process with the folks at TFO and over in Korea. Was it a little bit different and easier the second time around?
Well, it was, but it took us 2.5 years to get the action right and all the specifics right on the Stealth rod. It's a different design from a rod building perspective to get the action right and the overall weight and swing weight right and the recovery right. All those things have to be just so to get that rod where it needs to be. And it took us a while. I was surprised. It took us 2.5 years through the prototyping stage before the first one was ever on the market. It was fun. It was really fun. I learned a lot during the process, but it was much longer than the Drift.
Yeah. And so, just to give folks an idea, I know TFO's got one of the best rod designers in the industry in Korea. How many prototype iterations did it take, and kind of what does like one iteration look like?
Well, it's several months between prototypes, and I think we went through 4 or 5 different series. When you're dealing with a rod that has different lengths, that really affects the way that rod performs and how it recovers and how it swings when you cast it. And we went through several stages to get it right. At each stage, then we were giving feedback back to BJM, the design engineer in Korea. TFO has their own plant and manufacturing dedicated to TFO in Korea, and their own design engineer. So it was a lot of back and forth, but it was well worth it, though.
Very, very neat. And I know, I think the last time you were on, we were talking about Nymph Masters, and I know you haven't written released a book recently. Are you writing like you used to, or are you kind of moving on to different things?
Well, I'm still writing. I still write several either blog posts or magazine articles, every year. But I'm really into in-person teaching, and that certainly includes fly fishing shows at seminars or classes, but also really focusing on individual teaching and group camps, boot camps, streamside activities, those types of things. Really, really enjoy that. Speaking at clubs and doing banquets and club events, one-day fly fishing fairs. I just love the interaction with other anglers because it's an opportunity to share, but it's also an opportunity to learn and just hanging around anglers and talking about fly fishing. That's a good way to spend a day.
Yeah, and I would imagine the time that goes into one book, there's a whole lot of teaching and talking opportunities that you can swap for that, right?
That's for sure. That's for sure. And there may be another book down the road. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm really enjoying the personal interaction and just that opportunity of being together with other anglers.
Yeah, very neat. And folks don't know this, but you're actually out in Wisconsin in the driftless, relaxing after a day on the water. I know it's early in the season, but how's the fishing been so far in the driftless?
It's been really good. Our late winter, early spring spectacular is out on the water for about 5 hours this afternoon. And the water temperatures were in the upper 40s, almost 50. We were seeing some rising trout, probably maybe rising on a couple of peony mayflies up where I was. But I did catch one trout on a dry fly, caught a bunch on nymphs underneath the dry fly as a dropper or just Euro style nymphing. And now I'm sitting in front of the fire. The dog's curled up on the sofa and I'm talking with you. And it's just been a perfect day.
Yeah, that's neat. And so I know, right, most of your water there is basically spring driven. So the temperatures are relatively consistent, but they're smaller waters. So I would imagine they're maybe more susceptible than maybe what we think about in Pennsylvania from a temperature sensitivity perspective.
Yeah, streams are definitely labeled that way. I mean, we do see situations daily and then seasonally as well. I mean, the morning temperatures, the evening temperatures could be quite different. So I think it is important to carry a thermometer and check it multiple times while you're fishing because it does impact everything from the insect activity to the level of trout feeding interest and also to where trout are positioned in the streams. I mean, you're going to find trout in a different position on the stream when the water temperature is 45 than you will when it's 55.
Yeah. And for folks that aren't familiar, you want to tell them a little bit about the driftless area and maybe how it got its name as well?
Sure. Yeah, the driftless area is kind of parts of 4 different states. It's southwestern Wisconsin, and then southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa, and even northwestern Illinois. But it's an area that was not encroached upon by the glacial activity in the last ice age 10,000 years ago. There was 2 glaciers, the Des Moines and the Green Bay glaciers collided, but they did not encroach into this driftless area of these 4 states. And so as such, they weren't leveled and flattened by the glacial migration. And then as those glaciers receded, that's what left the rich topsoil that all the farmers in Illinois and Iowa really relish. That's called glacial drift, which deposited that topsoil. But because this area did not receive glacial movement, it did not receive the glacial drift, so it's called driftless. So driftless is actually a geological term, referencing the fact that the glaciers did not have that same effect in this area. So this area is, when the glaciers receded, all the runoff carved deep ravines and coulees and hollows, and so there's limestone bluffs and aquifers and springs that bubble up through the substrate, and it's just full of spring creeks and marvelous fishing and some smaller water, but also there's a lot of collector streams and rivers that funnel into the Mississippi, and there's some large water access as well. And our states, all the states in this area, particularly Wisconsin, have really worked hard using the revenues from licenses and other state funding to provide public access. There's, I think in my county alone, which is Vernon County, there's over 300 miles of public access streams.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I guess if folks have access to fishing TV, and if you go to the Fly Fishing channel, there's actually a movie called Driftless that highlights the TU reclamation program, and features the driftless angler. So if people wanted to learn more about that, that's probably 45-minute long short movie.
Yeah, it's great, and I probably should keep a little bit about how good this area is and how accessible it is, but we've just got a great area, and Viroqua is kind of the heart of the driftless area. Viroqua is a small town in Wisconsin, about 4,500 people, but we've got a phenomenal fly shop here. Matt Wagner and Jerry Meyer run that. They run a guide service out of it, and it's just real angler friendly, and it's just a great area to come and hang out and go fishing.
Very neat. And what would you say is the signature feature of the fishing in the driftless?
Well, there is a lot of, it's a lot of spring creeks, and so you're going to see a lot of smaller water, although there's some bigger rivers too, Kickapoo and the Bad Axe, and some of the larger rivers are more substantial, but most of it is going to be walk and wade, spring creek style fishing. So you're going to see large trout numbers. We've got a very impressive, trout numbers per mile in a lot of our streams. But you're going to see a lot of smaller fish. You're going to get your 12 to 16 inch fish with some regularity, but you're going to see a lot of fish in that 8 to 12 inch size category too, which is, it's awful fun too.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because I'm lucky enough to get to travel to fish a little bit. And, I always find it interesting, people learn how to fish their home waters, but I always find it interesting to see what other people do and what you can kind of bring home to kind of add to your toolkit. What do you think successful driftless anglers are particularly good at?
Well, I think you can always take small water and move on to big water. But, what you learn on big water, you can't always equally apply on small water. So it can be technically challenging. Casting accuracy is definitely, essential, and concentration on quality of drift and drift management, line management, all these things are big factors. A lot of our casts are going to be, especially in smaller water, is going to be straight upstream for dry flies, and you've got to be able to really manage your line and control your drift. The quality of the drift is very, very important. The trout can be pretty spooky sometimes. You get lower flows and very, very clear spring water, and you've got to have you got to be pretty conscious of your stream craft and your stealth mode when you approach these fish. And I think those lessons you learn here can easily transfer to larger water.
Very, very neat. And, for folks that want to experience the driftless area with a little bit of guidance, I know you and Mac Brown are going to do a multi-day school, and was kind of curious if you wanted to kind of let us know, what you and Mac have planned and where can folks get more information.
Well, we've had a ball with this. This is something that we're really starting to focus on. We're calling it a fly fishing boot camp A to Z. And the first one that we're going to run here is going to be out of Viroqua, Wisconsin. And we're going to be fishing a lot of the other streams in and around this area, but that's going to kind of be where we base out of. And the dates are June 8th through 11th of this year, and we're gonna focus on. That's going to be 3 days. We're going to focus on like a half a day of casting, and some of this cast too that you might really need to fish successfully this area. We're going to be focusing on some slackline reach casts and things like that will help you get those drifts that you need. And then we're going to do a real deep dive on nymphing techniques, all different styles of nymphing, fishing wet flies and streamers. There's going to be a lot of hands-on stuff too, Marvin. Here we're going to be just doing a lot of rigging, things that would also apply to other streams and rivers as well. Just general skills, basic skill requirements to take that next step up as an angler. We're hoping that everybody that comes through that boot camp will graduate as a much better angler and be able to take that to any river.
Yeah, and I mean the great thing is it's a really small event.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of a more hands-on kind of approach, kind of it's not a large class. We're looking at class sizes that will allow a lot of individual activity and interaction. And then we're going to spend at least 2 afternoons fishing and then critiquing each angler, where Mac and I will work through the group, not necessarily focusing on how many fish you catch, because we're going to be in a relatively small area so that we can see the whole group, but basically just looking at skills and mastering the casting and the presentation skills that are needed to catch fish. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll have a blast, and hopefully everybody comes away as a better angler.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll have a few mules too, right?
Oh, I think so. I think that's inherent.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and I'll drop a link so folks can hop on that in the show notes and check it out. And talking about your passion for nymphing, you and I are going to work on a short kind of multi-part series on nymphing skills, and I know you've got it broken down into 3 areas. You want to folks know kind of the 3 areas and kind of generally what we're going to cover.
I'm really excited to do this, Marvin. I'm really looking forward to teaming up with you and the Articulate Fly to really focus on nymph fishing. And we've, over the years, that the book Nymph Masters and the previous books as well really launched me on a quest across the entire world, really focusing on nymph fishing. I was able to fish with some of the European grandmasters in Poland and Czech and Spain and Italy and UK, all over the place to really refine and to combine those techniques. And a lot of the American anglers too that participated in the book, people like George Daniel and Devin and Fishing with Ed and Landon. A lot of people, Joe Humphreys, we really did put a lot of those ideas in that book, Nymph Masters. But really, the quest has continued beyond that book, and I'm excited to share some of these things when we do our in-depth discussion. And in that process, we've defined really the 3 goals or the 3 things that you need to achieve to get the most out of your nymph fishing.
Very neat. And what are those 3 things, and why are they so important?
Well, obviously the 3 goals of nymph fishing are, number 1 is to catch fish, and number 2 is to catch more fish, and so forth. But I don't know if you want me to spill the beans on this now, or if you want to save it for later, but I certainly can at least outline those 3 goals.
Yeah, I mean, we can literally just tell them what the 3 are. I think that'll help maybe get some folks moving in our direction.
Okay, let's do that. But the first goal is to get your flies to the fish at whatever level they're feeding at. So we're going to call that the strike zone. So reaching the strike zone is the first goal of nymph fishing. If you're not in the strike zone, you're not going to get the job done. So before you can reach goals 2 and 3, you've got to reach goal 1. Goal number 2 is going to be a natural drag-free drift. Just as important as it is in dry fly fishing, that natural drift is just as important in nymph fishing as well. And so we're going to focus on goal number 2 is being presentation and drift speed. Goal number 3 is an accurate and improved method of strike detection. When I present this to live audiences, I always ask the question, how many people here think you're missing more fish than you're catching when you're nymph fishing? And virtually every hand goes up. And I actually have a video that I'll show at that point that shows an underwater drift where a trout comes up and crushes the fly and shakes his head, swims sideways with it. And you can see the underside of a strike indicator of a flotation device, and it does not move at all. And that's kind of a moment for everyone. Their eyes just really pop, because it shows how many fish you're missing with inaccurate strike detection. And we're going to talk, once we define these goals, of course, we're going to talk about, how do we improve these things? How do we reach these goals? How do we fix these problems?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I had a similar experience, but it was actually, I kind of had a tradition to, between Christmas and New Year's, I would take my oldest son fishing, and I would remember watching, it's the winter time, right? And you're fishing eggs and squirmies and stuff like that. And I literally, watched a trout literally eat and spit out an egg probably 4 times, and the indicator never moved.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. We've all had that experience, and it's disheartening. And you think, okay, well, I'm never going to get this, who can fix that? How can that be fixed? But there are ways that we can fix this, and that almost 10-year nymphing quest that I've been on has really shown me that yes, there is a problem, but there are solutions as well.
Yeah, it's really neat. And so what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to have that broken down into 3 separate episodes. And, the great thing is the 4th episode is going to be a Q&A episode. And we're going to do some promotional stuff with some drawing prizes for people that submit questions. And if we use questions, so if you already have questions in your mind that you want to ask Jason, if you DM me on social media at The Articulate Fly, or if you send me an email, I'll start tracking those down, and you'll be at the very front of the group to potentially win some really neat stuff from some of our sponsors. And, Jason, before I let you move on tonight, do you have any other kind of projects or upcoming events you want to share with folks?
Well, I think these, some of the live in-person instructional training opportunities are really what I'm focusing on these next 2 years. And just as a follow-up to your comment as well about the 4-part nymphing series that we're going to be launching in April and May, in advance of this 4-part nymphing series that we're going to be doing on the Articulate Fly, we're going to be referencing photos and illustrations to help establish and really dig into each of these 3 goals. I'm going to be posting those illustrations, and I know, Marvin, you will as well, on your Instagram account, but I'll be posting them on my Instagram account or Facebook account. So if you want, you can hit me at Jason Randall Fly Fishing on Instagram, and at least a week before each of these series is going to be aired, I will post the illustrations that we will be using in that discussion, so that having those and listening to that, I think that each will be able to follow along very easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll drop them in the show notes too. And you gave folks your Instagram handle. You want to let folks know your website and all that kind of good stuff, because you got some other good stuff over there too.
Yep, sure. Yeah, they can reach me at jrflyfishing.com is the website, Jason Randall on Facebook, and then at Jason Randall Fly Fishing on Instagram. And as this series gets closer, we'll be putting up a lot of the materials that we'll be using in that discussion.
Excellent. Well, listen, I appreciate you making some time for me in front of the fire with a couple mules after a day of fishing, Jason. And
it's always a pleasure, Marvin. And I would be remiss too if I didn't give another shout out to some of the things that you're doing in the sport too, and those folks that are in the sport. Marvin's been helping so many of us with our promotion and brand management. And if any of the guides or fly shop owners or anglers that are in the business side of things, if you're really looking at that, what your influence is on these different mediums. I mean, Marvin has been expert at guiding so many of us through, and I just wanted to say thank you, Marvin, for all that you've done for our sport and so many in it.
Oh, well, gosh, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's kind of funny, right? I always tell people I made the mistake of being a business person and a lawyer instead of a fisherman. And so I try to kind of bring those gifts that I've developed to the fly fishing world and help folks out. So yeah, if there's anybody out there that thinks can benefit from any of that stuff or any kind of business consulting or any of that kind of stuff, just don't hesitate to hit me up. I'm regularly on the phone talking to folks, and I love doing it.
Well, thanks for all you do, Marvin. We've all benefited from it, and thanks for having me back on the Articulate Fly.
Yeah, it's going to be fun too. I appreciate you making the time and doing the project with me. I think we're going to have a lot of fun over the next couple of months.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Good night.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Again, thanks to our sponsor, Norvise, and be sure to head over to www.nor-vice.com to check out all of their awesome products. Tight lines, everybody.